Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Arsenal Pass for a special deck tech. I'm joined by Mr. Heuristic, of course, Brendan Patrick, my co-host, and the third amigo that you're very familiar with at this point, Sasha Markovic. Boys, welcome to the deck tech for Briar PT Lille.
Heyo.
How's everyone's... So, Brendan, Sasha still traveling through Europe. How's everyone doing at the moment?
Yeah, I'm in a hotel in Berlin. Beautiful city. I think Sasha's in a closet somewhere in Serbia. Is that correct?
A dusty closet.
Well, I've put up a nice
It's
little...
dark and dank.
I've put up a nice
It's
little image
dark
of
and dank
Sasha
in here.
at dinner, so at least you can see him looking good. Today we're going to cover this Briar deck that we played at Pro Tour Lille. Going to go through main deck, sideboard, card choice options, and a little bit about sort of matchups and things like that. So first thing I did want to ask though is, Sasha, I'm going to ask you, why Briar for Pro Tour Lille?
Realistically, Briar was just the backup deck if we couldn't break it. I personally spent quite a lot of time trying to break it. Funnily enough, within Briar, most of the time was me playing with Blossoming Spellblade. And the list that we ended up on was like a list I made like the very first week of testing, and then we just adjusted for the metagame at the end. But this Briar deck in particular, I think, is just like objectively the most powerful version you can. And then you can have variants upon it. Like Matthew Folks, who took down the event, had like somewhat of a variant upon it. They're pretty much all Spellbound Creeper based. And then like, the Briar regular shenanigans of Channelmount Heroic, but we can get into that in a sec.
Yeah, we'll dive straight into the list in a bit. But Brendan, I did want to maybe throw to you. Sasha talked about creepers. Any other big differences in this kind of list? Any fundamental kind of ways that this deck maybe plays differently to how people are used to or have seen Briar play so far through Pro Tour Lille? Maybe differences to Matt Folks' deck and also, of course, what we're seeing through this national season so far.
Yeah, I think Matt Folks had the clairvoyance to also play Spellbound Creepers, which is just kind of objectively better than Snapdragon Scalers, in my opinion. Also, Tome of the Arknight. We saw Tome of the Arknight not in a lot of lists, but I think that card is very, very powerful. And just calling back to the centerpiece of this deck, it's probably going to be explosive growth in a lot of these aggressive mirrors, and that's really where we're trying to get our edge. Really finding these sort of burst turns from traditional Channel Mount Heroic, but also having this package of explosive growth, which can allow you to really eke out a pretty powerful turn almost out of nothing. Combine that with Tunic and being able to use that resource to play explosive growth and fuse it. You can end up bursting your opponent outside of your Channel Mount Heroic turns. Also, I feel like Amulet of Earth was a card that was potentially overlooked by other creepers. It's effectively just kind of a attack reaction that gives you an additional action point, and Amulet of Earth, obviously combined with Force of Nature, can really threaten these anthem effects, and your opponent is really damned if you do, damned if you don't when trying to block out attacks on Force of Nature turns when you have Amulet of Earth on the board. So I think that's probably one of the most powerful cards in the deck, and like most Briar decks, I think our deck does block a bit better than the Matthew Folks list per se, but also it's a Briar deck, so it doesn't block too much. Therefore, this 0 defense amulet actually doesn't hurt you as much as you might think.
Cool. All right, well, with that, let's just get straight into the list and start breaking down the core of the deck. All right, we're going to break down the deck list here. You can see on the deck list here on the page, on the screen, you can see we've got the sideboard cards denoted and then the main deck. I do just want to quickly point out the core of the deck is 56 cards, 27 non-attack actions, 29 non-attack actions, and then obviously siding up to the full 60. Playing a 30-30 split into every matchup so that we can make sure those tomes and sonatas are always giving the best math. So let's talk a bit about the engine of the deck quickly. Sasha, I'm going to throw it over to you. And what is the engine of the deck? What are the cards that are key to this version of Briar in particular?
Sweet. So we didn't reinvent the wheel too much. So everything stems from Channel Mount Heroic being the most powerful card. And then based off like your 30-30 split, your non-attacks ideally want to draw you attacks, and your attacks ideally want to have go again and breakpoints. So the way that it boils down, that's pretty much it. And then we have like the spice of explosive growth and Amulet of Earth, which fuel like even more nut turns with Force of Nature, which most other decks can't abuse Force of Nature that well. And Creepers is also the thing that really kicks things off at instant speed, which is mad advantage that we had in the mirrors and like a lot of other matchups.
Yeah, Creepers is what can make this explosive growth and Force of Nature package so powerful, right, Brendan? So why don't you tell us a little bit about what some of these Force of Nature turns can actually look like? What are the cards kind of look like? What are your sequences kind of looking like to abuse this card? Because this really was like, a Force of Nature deck. Whenever you draw Force of Nature in this deck, you're really going to town.
Yeah, I feel like most Briar decks utilize Force of Nature as a way to create half an embodiment, or they're landing with Chain of Mouth Heroic and getting their sort of, their high roll turn or whatever. I think this deck via Explosive Growth and via Amulet of Earth is able to do that much more consistently, and Force of Nature becomes a threat sort of on its own for us. Keeping a Amulet of Earth on the battlefield when you're playing that Force of Nature, you're threatening that draw effect pretty much at any time. Your opponent is presented with a you're damned if they don't situation where they can either overblock and you don't pop the amulet, or they can underblock and then you pop it and are able to draw cards. Amulet of Earth, extremely powerful, and you're +1 on all attack actions across that turn. And then, Amulet of Earth can come in at instant speed as well as an attack reaction off of creepers, which is just ridiculous, right? Comes out of nowhere. It's a 0 cost. You're getting an additional action point. Just super, super powerful. And then Amulet of Earth's sort of way of combining with Explosive Growth is basically how we have kind of this pseudo budget CMH turn where we're not only relying on Chain of Mouth Heroic to win games. Explosive Growth, with the correct cards coming in with it, if it's with a Force of Nature, fantastic, but just with Amulet of Earth in its own, maybe with a Bramble Spark, is allowing us to have turns that are getting close to the power level of CMH to sort of eke out some enough advantage to maybe win a mirror where you don't draw your CMH faster than the opponent.
Yep. Bramble Spark plus Explosive Growth is a particularly nasty package, right? You can, and that's another reason a big reason for the Tunic in the list over something like Aether Ironweave. Tunic, the Explosive Growth, Bramble Spark, reveal your Earth. Tunic, the Explosive Growth, reveal your Earth. And then you're sort of in line to Creeper, something like an Amulet to push the damage. Creeper is a Force of Nature that's fused as well to push the damage. That's where you can really start to pop off. You don't even need a Channel Mount Heroic, whereas traditional Briar deck lists really kind of need that Channel Mount Heroic in order to pop off. I want to ask you, Sasha, why Captain's Call Red? What is that card kind of doing in the deck? What is the power of that?
So Captain's Call Red offers an immense amount of flexibility compared to like a Red Nimblism or just kind of any other non-attack action that just does one single thing. So when you have options, you have essentially power to kind of dictate how the turns of the game can go. The main reason we play the red is because the sideboard attack action cards, and also it's a red for Ravenous Rabble. The opportunity cost you lose is the +1 damage of the Nimblism, but that's pretty much it. I'd much rather be able to Rosetta Thorn a lot more in certain matchups than just have the +1, which doesn't really do anything.
Yep. If you look to the right-hand side, you can see the resources in this deck. So 18 blues in the main deck, and then we have these 3 Sotomaros in the sideboard. But maybe just tell us a little bit, Sasha, about why these 18 blues, it looks like a chunk of Earth cards, the Force of Nature, Tome. What are these cards? Are they all doing different jobs? They're doing a very similar job?
Yeah, so the main crux behind the resource base is that you want to pay for and keep Channel Mount Heroic around, which is the most powerful thing you can do, or create Embodiment of Lightning as quickly as possible. Even if Amulet of Earth had no text on it, just was a 0 cost non-attack action with Go Again, we'd probably see play over Earthwheel Surge. I personally don't understand Earthwheel Surge at all. It just seems like a clunky card, to be honest. It's just a blue non-attack. That's Earth.
Yeah, it doesn't use the creatures, right?
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, you need to understand that most of this deck is in the context of Spellbound Creepers. I think that Spellbound Creepers is almost objectively better than Snapdragon Scalers, but you do need a list that can utilize it, and Amulet of Earth is one of those cards that I think really lets Spellbound Creepers shine.
Yep. Okay, with that, let's move through and talk about some of the sideboard options in this deck. All right, so with the core of the deck being the 56 cards, we're always adding in those 3 attack actions to get up to the 30, and then 1 non-attack action. Let's start with the non-attack actions, Sasha. We've got 1 Tome of Fiendal and 1 Revel in Runeblood that are options, and then these 3 Sotomaro. Maybe talk to us a bit about where these cards are coming in.
Yeah, so the one-ofs, they kind of mix and match depending on the matchup. Effectively, you only want Revel in the slower matchups where they are preventing Arcane Barrier. So the Revel pushes a breakpoint in arcane damage so that you can even keep the creepers around for an extra turn, or just push through to get Thorn through as well. The Tome of Fiendal is pretty much for every other matchup that we're expecting, which is more of an aggro meta game. Whenever you free roll the Tomes of Creepers on the defensive turn, you're just kind of neutralized 4 life for free, which is just amazing. This is like a even better that all you got. And the only thing that it's cost you is a counter on your creepers, which in the aggro mirrors pretty much can get as high as 6 in testing. So yeah, that's pretty much where that crux is. And so tomorrow is just used for old time pretty much for slow fatigue matchups, so you can play more Channel Mount Heroics. Pretty rinse and repeat matchup.
Yeah. So you take out 3 of the other blues, something like a Weave Earth, and then straight in with the Sotomaros. And then, of course, adding in that one non-attack action matchup dependent, like Sasha said, to get to 30. Brendan, what about the attack actions? We've got 12 different attack actions in the sideboard here. We've got, what look on the surface of it, I guess, poppers for Prism, but actually these 6+ attack actions coming in for a swath of matchups. Maybe talk us through the Command and Conquers, the Race Faces, and the Runic Reclamations to start with.
Mm-hmm. Command and Conquer, most specifically for things like Lexi and Phi. We're going to talk about the equipment as well, but something like Crown of Seas is also drastically increasing your ability to actually have game into Lexi, one of your worst matchups as Briar. And Command and Conquer pretty good about denying Phi that potential 5-card hand. Erase Face, just a new card out of Uprising. Yeah, that's it. That's it. Uprising. Yeah, but I think one of the most powerful cards that come out of there and one of the staples, right? Because it's just what it can do against some of your opponents is super powerful. So we talk about something like Dash, which showed up in Force at the PT. Erase Face is going to be very, very effective at making them block. I mean, Dash literally has to block this card, especially if they're boosting into you because they can't boost. Has a lot of other sort of effective use cases against other heroes as well. Something like Viscerai, right? Denying those rune chants.
Turning off Mob Risk, guys.
Yeah, exactly. It's gonna put you in a really good spot. And then finally going ahead to Runic Reclamation. That's mostly gonna be, obviously was for Prism as well, but was against the mirror, right? So when your opponent drops a Channel Not Heroic, you're able to Runic Reclamation and basically time lock them, right? Because they're gonna have to block out that Runic. Maybe they have their armor left. If they are, they can get a decent rate. But other than that, they're gonna have to dump pretty much their entire hand to save their CMH, which effectively turns out half the value of their CMH anyway. So Runic Reclamation almost exclusively for the mirror in that case.
Yeah. And then, especially with that breakpoint of 7, so difficult to deal with unless they have that block 4 with a 3 defense that gets the buff from the embodiment. Exude Confidence, the last card here, probably one of my all-stars over the kind of Pro Tour Lille and Nationals weekend, as we see more defense reactions come in with Icelander, with Dramai, etc., plus Instance, and of course, always good against Ultim and some Bravo builds. The other kind of, I guess, thing we haven't talked about is that we sometimes side in 6 attack actions, so not just the 3 attack actions. So, Runic for the Mirror, Race Face for Viscerai, CNC for Phi, etc. But sometimes Explosive Growth is coming out. I know, Sasha, you didn't really take it as much. You think it's too powerful. It forces cards from the opponent's hand all the time. But I think against Prism, for instance, I know we were often taking out Explosive Growth there, but probably the only matchup, really.
Yeah, I know Brendan spoke, I think previously on a different episode about how people just don't see Amulet of Earth on the table. So I was noticing that pattern as well. So Explosive Growth and like hidden Amulet of Earths were pretty powerful. So while people weren't really paying attention, kind of abusing that as well.
Yeah, and you can always creep as it in any matchup, and it's still ridiculous, right? Like a lot of people were cutting on defense reactions; they weren't seeing them as much, and if they were, they still have to commit a card to stop that. Plus, you still have the rest of your turn to go on, especially with a Force of Nature turn. That's a lot of cards to commit. Yep. Okay, cool. Last thing I want to do is just a bit of a wrap up and talk about, anything you might do differently, any other options. Actually, first of all, Brendan, Crown of Seeds. Why Crown of Seeds in this list? What is it doing? Because it was a kind of a card that I was super excited to have in my Nationals list that I didn't have at Lille. Ultimately played no Icelander, played no Lexi, but...
Yeah, it gives you edge in your bad matchups. Gives you, percentage points against Lexi, right? So basically you're pitching to clear out the arsenal, get a 5 card, and then ideally you're pitching a blue, so you have 2 resources floating for on-hit effects like Chilling Ice Vein, but also, you're getting the 5 card hand, so you potentially have more resources on your turn to pay for Frostbites. It's just giving you way more game. Crown of Seeds is actually, I think, debatably even better into Icelander, right? You're able to pitch the blue, keep the 2 resources up for the Aether Ice Vein, or for more to pitch for Arcane. You're pairing it with Vexing Quillan. Like, Crown of Seeds makes the Icelander matchup just not very close, to be honest. Like, it is so ridiculous. Like, as a single card addition, it is so ridiculously powerful against something like Icelander. I think there's no reason you shouldn't have it in your deck. And that assurance against something like Lexi, which I know is less represented in the meta, it's just 100% worth it. But as Icelander continues to rise, Crown of Seeds is a card that you're going to want to have in your deck.
Yep. Last one I want to ask Sasha about is Smashing Good Time, a card that was played in the list of the PT, but probably would cut now. Maybe Dash is kind of dropping off.
Yeah. To that point, the sideboard is super flexible, which is like really nice for a deck that you're not really locked into like all these options and cards like Prism was. So Smashing Good Time, gave you immense amount of percentage points against Dash. Briar's like the only deck that can't really fatigue the Dash aggro deck. So you had to have a proactive approach in Smashing Good Time, being able to like kill the Tekla Pounder very quickly and early. Instant speed because of creepers, they never see it coming. It was quite attractive.
Cool. Right. Well, thank you so much for joining us from the closet, Sasha, and Brendan from Germany. Brendan, want to say last thing: if people want to find full sideboard guide and more information about the deck, where can they find that?
Well, our guest writer here, Mr. Hayden Dale and Sasha Markovic, will be nice enough to write up a full sideboard guide and basically what we used at the Pro Tour to basically whip out and side our deck for our matchups. That will be up on Patreon if you do want that additional information. Everything you need to pick up the deck and start being competitive. But yeah, in the mind of a master here with Mr. Sasha Markovic.
Awesome. Well, until next time, see you then.